That's good.
I will call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have roll call, please.
Councilmember Waller?
Yes.
Seligson? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Yes. Citizen comments. If you're not on the agenda, you may approach the council at this time.
Yeah, we have that one addition of the pay request.
Oh, yes, there is a item.
Pay request number 26 for the water treatment plant project. I think you get it mailed to you if you want to look at it.
Yes. I don't know, did everybody get that? It was in the email this afternoon.
No.
Thing isn't.
Okay,
You
huh?
can pass that down if you want,
Is
if
it
you want
from
to
you,
look at it.
Stacy?
Yeah, if you want to look at that,
Okay.
make sure Blaine gets it back.
Oh, there it is. Thank you.
I will make a motion to add the pay request number 26 from Magny Construction for the water treatment plant as item D under consent agenda.
I will second.
Any discussion? It's coming your way, Kevin. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. We have no public hearings tonight. We have reading and approval of minutes from our last November 26th meeting.
I will move approval of the regular minutes of our November 26th meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. And we have the same condensed version for the paper from the November 26th meeting.
I'll move on to condensed version of the minutes.
I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. And I will make a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda consisting of the audit of city bills, the November transit report, gamma report from the Eagles, and the added pay request number 26 from Magny Construction.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion on any of the items on the consent agenda?
44, Morse Fire Control for fire extinguisher maintenance. Is that for everything for the city for like $2,000 or $2,052?
Like an annual check and stuff?
Did you
I
say
would,
like a
I would
large
guess it
amount
probably is.
for all
Because
the
I
vehicles
think they
and
tend to
buildings?
go around and do everything at once. We don't have a schedule where they come in from time to time. So that, I would guess that's what it is, yes.
If it's not, you can let us know
Yep.
what it is. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I haven't seen the dog park sign. I see we bought a sign. Maybe need to drive by there and look.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
Just like a big, like.
Yep, it's got the rules on it and everything.
Okay.
The rules, this is a big dog, this is a small dog?
Yeah, well, it's more like if you want to bring a dog in here, here's what you have to do.
Oh, good.
They gotta have their shots and a collar and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple smaller ones that one marked where the big dogs were and where the small dogs were.
Do they need to be licensed by the city?
Well, we have a licensing ordinance that requires them to be licensed.
And we
but
do
not-
license,
not-
right?
We do licenses, but not every dog in town is licensed, and we don't have a dog catcher going out stopping dogs to check licenses. But at a minimum, they have to have a collar and they have to have their shots to go in the dog park.
Cool. Any other comments on the consent agenda?
Line item 59, Unger's Furniture, City Hall wood. I would assume that's made into furniture
No, that's for
Just
decoration
wood.
and I had that write up in the city manager newsletter about doing some remodeling up in the front. So if you want to stop over there and take a look, there's a little bit of decoration and
Okay.
there's some flooring and painting and things that are going on.
Stacy's the only one with carpet.
Yeah,
Really?
but it looks really nice.
It's on the way out. Yeah, it does. Did you do that whole wall, or that's new, isn't it?
The wall by the copier
Yeah,
over by
yeah.
the workstation is wood, and actually there's some wood in the offices on the bottom. You know, so it's more decorative.
Yeah.
Decorative, and then
Yeah, it looks nice.
they
I was in
just
there
got them
today.
laying the flooring in the front by the counter. That new vinyl floating flooring is what they call it. Like it's in the break room. Oh,
So
yeah.
who's doing the work like?
That is, Anders is doing,
Mark Osborne.
Oh,
doing the flooring and stuff in Marcotte.
yeah, he does good work.
Yeah, well, it's hard to find somebody that can do that kind of stuff, and when you find somebody and they have time, you know, because we wanted to do some painting and some other stuff, but even like in here in the council chambers, you can see where the carpet's coming up, you know, and so we went to the new carpet squares like we have in the conference room, you know, so it turned out really nice.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the consent agenda? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. In the interest of the time and the absence of the new chief, we're going to skip item A under ordinances and resolutions. We'll go to item B, resolution approving an assignment of a TIF note.
Yeah, and actually Mike Stobie's here from INH. They're the ones that are managing the East Point Village property, and we received a request. You want to just come up and explain it really quick, Mike? It might be the easiest way to do it. Should be.
Yeah, it is.
Recording
It
for
just
that video.
it just records on the CD.
Mayor, members of the council, Blaine, thank you for inviting us to talk about this topic. I am Mike Stovey. I'm one of the partners of the project, and we are the management agent for it. And we're very pleased to tell you that our operations are going very well, almost exactly budget. So we're pleased to be here. We have an opportunity to modify our existing loan with our lender, and in doing that, we thought it would be appropriate to convert our existing ownership structure from basically a master limited liability company to 3 separate limited liability companies. It gives us more flexibility within the partnership as we age, and so it's the same 3 people. It's myself, the builder, and an investor contact of ours. Our attorneys looked at it. I believe it's met the satisfaction of the city's council, legal counsel. Shouldn't pose any burden to the city, as the tax increment note payments will be issued to one payee per cycle or per tax period. You do have an assignment before you that I believe is straightforward, and with that, we ask for your endorsement.
So what happens with TIF is Briggs and Morgan is our attorney that works on all the TIF documentation, and so when this request came in, we had them review it for us, and actually they made a couple recommendations for the document. Mike mentioned one of them was originally they wanted the TIF to go to the 3 companies because that's what they're doing, is they're separating it out, which they can. We've actually done an assignment of tax increment financing already for the Legacy Living project. So there has been an assignment of TIF that's come before the council. In this case, the recommendation was to have it go to one company, which is going to be INH, and then they'll distribute the TIF out. So on our end, nothing's really going to change other than where we send the check. Nothing's going to change in the tax increment financing project. It's still going to be set up the same way it's set up. As he said, they're just changing their funding, their financing, and so this was an opportunity for him to do this. And the recommendation of Briggs and Morgan is to go ahead and allow it. And then you guys will actually pay the legal fees for Briggs and Morgan.
I figured that would be part of it.
But they do a very good job of reviewing this stuff for us.
Sure.
Now, do the original TIF districts then, do they get restructured at all, or? does
No,
that affect
nothing,
them at all?
no, nothing changes
That
on
part
it.
stays the same.
All the rules stay the same, the actual TIF agreement stays the same, it's the assignment of the TIF note. So once they're done doing their work, there's a note that's issued that authorizes them to be reimbursed for costs that they invested, and that's what the reassignment's about, is this note. So all the other rules stay the same, exactly the same, and it doesn't affect any other properties within that TIF district, doesn't affect any other TIF districts. So it's strictly them.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions of Mike?
That makes sense.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we can come back and act on the resolution.
I will move approval of the resolution reassigning, redoing the tax increment financing as was stated.
I will second.
Any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Selby, Wallers,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Pellickson. Yes. Mayor Casey.
Yes. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
I understand that you might be pressed for time. We do have these, if you want to take these along.
You gotta sign, you gotta sign the third page. Oh, you already did.
Yeah, I believe I did.
He's way ahead of me.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Blaine. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good
Good to see
seeing
you.
you.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay, we'll back up to item A, resolution appointing Morris Fire Department Assistant Chiefs and other officers. And we have that resolution in front of us, and we have the new chief, and we have the old chief. He's not that old. Yeah, there you go. Right. So we'll act on the resolution, and then we'll present the badge to Matt.
I'll move on that resolution appointing Morris Fire Department Chief and other officers for 2020.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? I guess I think at this time is appropriate to thank Dave Dibdall for his years of service as a fire chief. I think you've done a great job. I understand you're going to stand on or stay on as at least as a consultant, and yeah, help him out a little bit. Maybe be his Matt's right hand man until the assistant chiefs get up, take your place.
Yeah, well, it's a really good group. It's been an honor and privilege to be the fire chief, and just happy with all the things we've been able to accomplish these past several years with equipment, renovation of the fire hall and stuff. It's really, it's gone really well.
Great. Any other comments or?
I think, you've seen, I think you're really involved in the redistricting and all that. And I just want to applaud you for, being involved with that and pulling all that together. It was pretty involved.
Great.
Yeah, it's been really good. It's all about surrounding yourself, people smarter than yourself, be successful. And it's the reason why, chiefs kind of let us go, make sure we're going the right direction. It's, these guys, Matt shares the same vision I have, so it'll be a smooth transition.
Great.
Yeah, and I would just echo that. It's been a tough year for you guys.
Yeah,
Dave and I are in contact all the time about I get a chance to see every call that they go on, and this has been a tough year. They've had some really, really stressful calls, and most people don't realize, what they wind up going through. But when you start losing lives out on accident calls and things like that, they're usually one of the first people there, and law enforcement, and they have to deal with all that. And so they take on a lot as individuals, and I would imagine their families take on that same thing. So I appreciate everything you've done for the city and all the work you've done, and I look forward to working with Matt as the new fire chief, and we're very lucky we have a very good department.
All right, anything else for the resolution? We'll have roll call vote for the resolution, please.
Member Miller?
Yes.
Gullikson?
Yes.
Wallers?
Yes.
Selby? Mayor Dees?
Yes. I think we'll have a little photo opportunity here. Matt, Dave, you want to step forward? Yeah, you can give it to me and I'll give it to Matt. You don't have I state your name, Matt, but I know you do a good job. I will present you your chief. All right.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, no.
Awesome.
You want to turn it on?
No, usually the wives get to pin them on.
Congratulations.
You want to?
Yeah.
Matt?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Good job, thank you.
Congratulations, Matt.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's Sandy.
Looking forward to working with everybody. Yep.
Okay, great.
That's effective January 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, great. So you got 3 weeks yet, Dave.
I got 3 weeks.
I hope it's really quiet.
Hopefully it'll be quiet.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, city manager's report and recommendations.
Snow, we got lighting, a little bit of maintenance work at City Hall and the airport. So probably the big
I'll
item
back
that
up.
I would talk about it would be we've had discussions over the years about snow removal, and this is another year, good example, where depending on when the snow comes and when the guys are available to come out, you call them out on a small little snowfall or wait until they actually come to work the next time. But one of the things that we've talked about is we think we need to change the ordinance on parking on streets. And so what we want to do is we want to just kind of watch it this winter. I don't know if you got hold of the one guy that we talked about this morning that apparently is gone, because normally would not leave a vehicle on the street, but it's been there. And just looking at, what kinds of things we see this winter, what kinds of rules we could put into place, and then sometime next summer we'll present something to you to look at. And really what we're leaning towards is once that first snowfall comes, prohibit parking on streets. And the general public, one of the things I talked about 2 weeks ago was if you let them park on the streets after it snows, then they'll get used to that. And you go around them. And then once you go around them, then you got to come back and you got to plow that area that car was parked in. Sometimes they don't move them right away. If you have a big snowfall, they might not be able to get the car out. And I think the one thing that we talked about that we need to do a lot of research on is how many parking spots should off-street parking provide? because we know that there's a lot of rental houses that maybe don't have room for them. But then we know that the university also has offered to make available, I think, some parking during snow emergencies and stuff like that. So we really need to think about that. You know, where are they gonna put their cars? Last year we ran into some problems with some people that didn't have a place to put their car. Well, you can't leave it on the street, and that was during a snow emergency. You can't leave it on the street because you don't have a place to put it. You gotta find a place to put it. I mean, that's just the bottom line. So we have to answer some of those questions, and then we'll come back to you and get your thoughts on it and try to write up something. There are other cities that prohibit on-street parking after the first snowfall, after a certain period of time, like November 1st, till another period of time in the spring. And then the idea would be, once that happens, then we would give out, not maybe warnings, but put notes on cars reminding people that even though it's not snowing, you're still not supposed to park overnight. You know, and we designate a time frame, because it winds up being a nuisance for snow removal to have to come back and clean up places, and it's going to be more efficient if we do it this way. So any thoughts that you might have, you'll get a chance to share them. The last 2 snow events we've had already, obviously there's cars that have stayed on the road and they had to go around them and they had to come back and get them, and that once that area has a pile of snow on it, it doesn't clean off as nice as if they can get it the first time around. So that's something that we're talking about.
Is the plan, Blaine, not to do snow emergencies this year unless it's a true emergency?
I think we'll do snow emergencies like we've normally been doing.
Oh, okay.
Once it gets to the point, you know, the thing is, it's like, you really don't know how much snow you're gonna get, you know? So the first 2 snows we've had haven't been that big. You know, actually, I think we were supposed to get like 6-8 inches, and we got maybe 2 on the one snowfall. And then the timing, the big thing is the timing on them. You know, because if you get snow during the day, you know, then people can go home and they can clear it and they can get off the road. But if you get snow at the wrong time, then like the one snowfall, you know, do you send them out on a Saturday or a Sunday to clean it up if you just got a little bit? No, they come back on Monday. And at the same time, one of the things I shared this morning, there was a little bit of chatter on Twitter about filling in driveways and stuff. Well, if we leave it on the road and we come back and scrape it, then it fills in, and it's not just nice fluffy snow. Now it's chunks of ice and snow and things like that. And we've had people that have indicated that they've had a hard time dealing with it. We've also had a couple issues. We put in some new sidewalks on Oregon Avenue that are next to the road, and it's almost impossible to clean off that sidewalk once you dump all that scrapings from the road. My neighborhood, it gets close. If there's a lot of snow, they might get close to our sidewalks because we have a very small boulevard. And once that gets in there, it's really hard. And we've had people that complained about the corners, because they can do their sidewalk, but when it gets to the corners are filled in with all the big chunks of ice, and they can't get them with their snow blower, and they can't shovel them. And we've actually, last year, I think we sent out the crews to clean corners. So there's a lot of things like that you have to consider when you're looking at these issues too. But generally, I think we'll just keep doing snow alerts the way we were. You know, when looks like we're going to get a big snow, then we're call an alert. We'll tow vehicles. And one of the issues we had last year with the towing company was they didn't necessarily have the right equipment, I think, Reggie, to get all the vehicles. You know, so we had a big 4-wheel drive raised up pickup truck that never got towed, and the neighbors were very mad because they got towed. So it's like, if you're going to tow, you got to tow all the vehicles. So you got to figure out a way to get them, you know, because you can't just leave the ones that are hard and take the easy ones, because then people get very upset. So we had that happen last year. The neighbor never got towed, and we did.
Could just ticket vehicles that are sitting on the street instead of towing. I mean,
Well, and that's
the ticket and tow,
faster,
right?
More convenient, then you're not. But I mean, that could be looked at too. Although it doesn't stop them from doesn't solve the solution of getting them off the
Right.
street.
Right.
But after a couple, I mean,
Yeah.
that would be one solution instead of towing too.
Right, yeah. Well, and so if we do no parking on the streets, and that's what'll happen, is you'll get a ticket. And so we'll give some warning notices that, you know, you need to find a place to get, in the wintertime, you need to find a place to get your vehicle off the street. You would think there'd be some common sense that if it's gonna snow, you get your vehicle off the street, but it depends on when it snows and whether or not, you know, you're watching the weather reports all the time to know that it's gonna snow, or like in this one case, I'm pretty sure this individual is gone somewhere for whatever reason. Could be an emergency health thing or something. It's just not normal because it's in our neighborhood.
I know
You
exactly what you're
you know
talking
the one I'm talking about, because it's not normal for that vehicle to be sitting there, so something happened, you know, and Reggie's trying to get a hold of the individuals to let him know, but,
Is it a problem to have a vehicle on the street after it's cleared?
no, you know, and that's one of the things
And
that we
that's
wanna
just
make,
like,
that's.
we gotta get the vehicles off to get it plowed, but once it's plowed, I just don't see the reasoning, but that's for us to be looking at down the road, but
Right.
once the snow's removed, we have to have something that's uniform. If it snows, if it's a half inch, an inch, or if it snows, it needs to be off the street until the streets are plowed, my feeling. And
Right.
the streets are there, we pay good money to have the streets and to use them, but once it's plowed, use the streets, but
Right.
not to
So that's a
totally
very
ban
good point.
parking in the wintertime, I think is just not real wise, but that's my own personal.
But that's why we wanna.
Yeah,
we
we'll
want-
discuss
we
it,
want
we'll figure it
you-
out.
You get to decide it.
Right.
We're just gonna give you some ideas and suggestions.
Well, I think I agree with what Blaine said. You know, if we allow people to park on the street, they're gonna park on the street, they're gonna get used to it. If we say, hey, look, from November 1 till June 20th, after winter, they can't park on the street, they'll get used to it,
Well, I think
you know, I think.
the real challenge is gonna be the rental properties, and I think we all know that about 40% of the properties in Morris are rentals,
Right,
and the residential properties, I don't see a problem, because most people have garages and things, but, you know, when you have rental properties, you got multiple people in a dwelling, and they're all gonna probably drive a vehicle,
right,
and, so that's gonna be the real challenge.
Right.
right.
I was under the assumption that you had to, as a landlord, you had to provide parking for every bedroom you had, so that potential, is it that not,
That's
it's
what-
not in there?
that's what we're looking-
Nothing?
No, Reggie's been looking at the rules.
As a landlord, I mean, that's what we were told years and years ago.
Right,
when
it
this-
used to
this-
be that way.
Okay, so then they changed it, because I was just talking to somebody else and they said the same thing, and I
Yeah.
said, that's not what I'm hearing.
No.
So all these years, we didn't have to do that.
Well, I think only since the most recent agreement, the rental policy.
When was that changed then?
Oh, boy, that'd have been early 2000s.
The city code, I talked to HRA regarding this, and because most rental properties are single-family homes, even though there's multiple tenants in different rooms, if it only has one kitchen, it's a single-family home. So they only have to provide one space, one off-street parking space for each family. So there only has to be one off-street parking spot for this single-family rental property. So if it's multifamily, then it's one parking spot per family. But pretty much the number of kitchens dictates if it's a single family versus a multifamily. And that's through what's in the city code and what HRA is going to do. Because for the licensing, or the rental licensing through HRA, they don't have a requirement for that. It's all what's in the city code.
Right,
Well,
thank
it
you.
wouldn't be that different. It's not like you need a paved parking spot.
Right.
You just
Right.
say, you gotta go up on the grass. I mean, that's basically,
Yeah.
so I don't.
And we've had people, you know, complain that people were parking on their front yard, and it's like, well, they can in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if that's where they have to go, that's where they have to go, but,
The only problem I can see with renter is because, like I said, they provide is, I think this last snowstorm, that didn't snow a lot, but it was during the holiday and students catch a ride somewhere else, so sometimes that would be
Right.
another thing just to keep in mind that, again, if there's no parking on the street, so.
right.
But where they left their car and were actually out of town for the weekend.
Yeah, there's probably a few of those.
Yeah, and we know that
Actually.
school's gonna be getting out here pretty quick, so then,
Well, I mean, most of the time, they would take their own car for a 2-week break, but
To
a
go home,
longer
yeah.
weekend, yeah.
yep.
Right.
Yeah, so those are all good points we'll be looking at, and then we'll come back to you. Lighting, you know, we've done some checking on possible lighting sources for signs, and actually we looked at the downtown street, tree lighting, things like that. There's not a lot of real good lighting options that are, you know, solar powered or battery powered and things like that. The welcome to more signs, I think a couple of them are near a electric source, but there's a couple of them like out at the airport. I have no idea where the electric source would be for that one. The county garage is near the one on the north side, but they should have lighting. I mean, they really should.
They should, yeah.
And I think even for the tree lighting, that electric option that was there before wasn't necessarily a good one. So of all those sites, I think there's 32 sites, there's only 2 of them that work. And whether or not you can redo that, I know Jim was looking at possible pricing for that. You know, just, it's gonna be a short period of time that it's gonna be used too, and that's one of the things, but.
Yeah.
And then we had this other issue came up with the fairgrounds that after the fair was over, they do a review of everything to see if there's some changes that need to be made. And if you drive out to the fairgrounds, there's no lights along the street out there, so it's very dark at nighttime. And so I didn't realize it, but they've been doing some temporary lighting during the fair to try to light up that road better, so that, you know, because, well, you know how many people are crossing that road. It just makes sense probably to look at putting up some street lights there, and I'll be talking with the fair people and getting some pricing on that. And, you know, typically in new neighborhoods that go up, you know, there's street lights that get put up, and then we wind up paying for the power on them, or if they're new lights, what we pay for lights includes the pole and the light fixtures, so that's something that we'll take a look at. The pricing seemed pretty high, but then, you know, the current prices are different than originally when streetlights were put in. So that's something we're looking at. I mentioned City Hall. We don't sit down and try to look at a big, huge remodeling project. So typically what we've been doing is a little bit of painting and a little bit of carpeting and stuff like that. We did the conference room and stuff. And like I said, when you find a handyman that can come in and put in doors, actually that one conference room door that wouldn't shut, he fixed it in about 10 minutes. I don't know what he did, but I would have probably shaved it down to try to get it to fix, and I don't think he did any of that. You know, so we are doing some work over there, and we'll get that. I don't think it's been touched since we were talking about the bathrooms. We actually put in a request in the budget for the bathrooms, but I don't think they've been touched since 1980 when I worked here originally. You know, so they really need to be updated, you know, and that's one of the things that we're gonna be looking at. And then you're gonna start seeing some stuff come through on the airport, because the next step for the airport's gonna be I'll come to the city council to get authorization to do a request for qualifications for engineering firms. We have the right to pick who we want, pretty much, but we do have to go through the process of at least obtaining qualifications of other engineering firms that do airport work. It's not based on price, it's based upon qualifications, is how you have to make your selection. So that's we can't do any more work at the airport until that happens. And then the next project after that is gonna be the design work for the runway extension and land acquisition for the runway extension. So that's kind of where we're at. Just personally, it's usually a good time for me to take a little bit of time off after the budget's done. So I think last year I took off the last 2 weeks in December. even though I have to come back for meetings and stuff like that, but I'll probably do the same thing again this year. It's usually a quieter time, and then we'll hit it hard going into January. Any questions about anything?
I got a couple comments on the on the sign lighting. God, if there's any way that we can do solar and battery, I think that's what we should do. Just to kind of keep up with, that's where we're headed. And putting in electricity to them, that's expensive too.
It is.
You know, so lights, the solar and the battery may be expensive, but putting in the electricity is expensive too. So maybe
We'll bring
keep
in a recommend-
looking at it.
I know Sandeep was looking at it, and Jim Dittbetter was looking at it, but it was like $800, $900 a sign to put in solar, so.
That's not as much as I was thinking. You were gonna say like thousands.
Right.
So that, I mean, that's minimal for what it would, the benefit that it would give us. And
Yeah.
All that, and it's gonna pay back a bit, because you're not gonna have any
Right.
ongoing expense like you
And-
would with electricity.
And
Right.
I can't imagine, especially the ones that aren't close to electricity, how much that's gonna cost to run electricity, so.
Right.
I think it's expensive
So
either
that-
way.
So
but-
that's good to know, because that's kind of where we're at, so.
Yeah, that 800 to sign isn't
You know,
that bad.
and, you know, one of the things that I talked to Jim about, was maybe we just try one, and see how it works. You know, because it's a new technology, and then we can see, but you can't see anything at night in these signs, and if you go to, a lot of these communities have backlighting on their name and things like that on their signs as you're coming in, and it would be nice to do that.
Absolutely.
And then, thank you for that. And then on the fairgrounds streetlights, yeah, I was on that initial email, I think, from the Fair Board. I really think we should try to pressure Otter Tail just to put some in. I mean, really,
Sounds
I
like
mean.
a good mayor job.
Well, I'd be happy to talk to him. We pay for the electricity,
Yeah.
and the rest of the town, we pay for the electricity, they own the lights, why not there? Now, maybe there'll be some cost sharing on some of them, but I think that should be our first avenue.
Yeah, well, and technically, we pay for the lights too on all the rest.
Right.
You know, that's part of the pricing of their street lighting is the poles and the light and the electricity for it. And so when we went to LED lighting, we actually saved some on the electricity, but then they wound up keeping some of the price on the fixture itself, so that they can recoup it. But no, I think that's something that we can do, and maybe that's something that the fair can put a little pressure on them too.
Yeah, I think that should be our first avenue, rather than
Just pay for it.
just pay for it,
Yeah.
right? But at least
I think
explore
the
it.
bottom line is that it makes sense to light that area.
Oh, yeah, because it is dark. You say you drove out there, but it's pretty dark.
There's a lot of activity out there.
There
I mean,
is.
Every evening, there's something going on, it seems like.
There's like yard lights that are in about 30, 40 feet along, it's kind of weird. It's almost like the street lights were put in, like 40 feet in.
They're like yard lights
So
and
they're
they're
like
not
yard
street
lights. So
lights.
there's one at the city garage, there's one by the trailer court, there's one by those houses on the lake, there's one over by Wilkins, there's one up a little bit farther, but they're all on the west side. There's nothing on the east side
Right,
along the road, and I think that's where you'd want the lights, is along the east side.
yeah.
Just another thought on the, back to the signs. The original signs, were they not donated by Superior?
Neil Schmidtwell,
Right.
I think. Yep.
So the city hasn't incurred
Oh, we
any
had,
costs
yes.
on these signs,
Nope.
so I mean,
Good point.
we can certainly sprinkle lights.
Yeah,
I
Yep.
think appropriate.
Yeah.
very good,
I
yes.
just wanted you to know that we didn't forget about
Right?
Yeah, good.
any one
I
of
just
those
thought I'd bring it
items.
up, because I think, I'm sure we all know, but maybe there's people listening that didn't know that, you know, that are new to Morris. They probably didn't know where those signs came from. or how
Yeah,
they
right.
were.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions on the city manager report? Got to back up just a little bit. We've got the 2020 licenses. we got emails to add on to the list, American Legion and Me Mexico. And then, of course, most of them need insurance because they have year-end renewals and stuff like that. So, in the motion, we should include that subject to insurance.
I will move approval of the off-sale, on-sale, and Sunday liquor license for those listed and the ones added pending approval of the insurance.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 550. We didn't talk long enough, Blade.
I'd just
What-
like to bring up something, that the tree board, that they applied for that grant and they got it.
They did.
Yes, so I just think we have we have boards that we have great people, very,
They got,
I
yeah.
got an email that they
When was
received
that?
the grant. I don't look at that.
Did they get the grant or did they get that preliminary thing?
Was it the preliminary?
I talked to Sue and that
We were,
she said,
we were selected, yeah, we
Did
put
I
in
read it
a,
wrong?
yeah, we put in a grant application, there's a pre-app,
Pre-app.
and then we were selected on the pre-app and then invited to submit a grant, and so then
Oh, maybe
that was
that's what it
submitted.
was.
You know, and they put it together, so
Yeah, right.
Sue Granger and the tree board, they put everything together and that was submitted, so we'll wait and hear. I don't think we've heard back on that one yet.
yeah, you might be right, but I haven't heard
might have
anything
not-
about
I
that.
might have read it too fast too, that if it was just the preliminary, I'm gonna look now, so nobody quotes me wrong.
Well, between the ash and the elm, you know, majority of our trees are in there, and the things that are coming through the state, that we need to put in some new varieties on our trees. I just reading through on the reports that we're so far behind to try to get caught up, so.
Yeah, and, you know, actually, it's nice to have people that, you know, can answer questions too, because I know there's a pine beetle that's coming. Actually, when we're in Germany, we stood in the forest where the pine beetle destroyed the whole forest. So every single pine tree in that forest was dead. But then Sue reminded me that we don't have a lot of pine trees around here. We have a lot more ash trees and maple trees and those kind of trees. So the city's parks are were almost completely filled with ash before we started changing that out. And they were planted because the elm trees were getting infected, and so it's kind of a never-ending cycle with watching that stuff. But the more varieties you plant, the less likely you have to worry about, you know, one specific bug or disease that might come along. And so I think we're probably farther ahead than a lot of communities, because that got started early, and that's part of being Tree City, USA City, and part of being a community that cares about trees enough to have a tree board. I'm actually one of the things I'll do before I leave here on vacation is to finish the Tree City USA application. And I get all that information from Sue Granger and tree board people, and then some of it's from Jim Benner with what we actually spend on trees and things like that. But we've been in Tree City, USA City for a long, long, long time.
Okay, here's what the email said. The city's application for the tree planting grant was approved.
What-
Does that mean the grant was approved?
What's the date on it?
It was Monday.
Oh, I haven't seen it. No, that is
I
the
bet
grant.
that's
That
new.
is the grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I never got that one.
Quote away.
Who sent it?
Sue, and then maybe Jim should have received it.
Jim might have got it. So that is the grant.
The night?
Yeah, the night.
Yeah, that's the grant. So that is good.
Good.
Yeah, okay, you can quote it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's super good, it's a
It
lot
is.
of money, and again, I just think we have these boards where
Yeah,
community
they're-
members are
yep.
on that, you know,
What's the dollar amount?
over 16,000.
Yeah, it was to plant, what, 350 trees, and then there's some education, I think there's some education stuff in there too.
And I know they also got, and besides the grant, they got some community members to sign in, to write recommend, or what, that was a great thing. I know Troy Goodnow was one of them.
Yep.
I don't know what, Blaine, you were one too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But we had I'm putting together a Tree City USA application, so we had that tree planting over at the museum, and so Sue took pictures, and actually the newspaper covered it, and the Historical Society covered it, and so when you put all that stuff in there, that's very powerful for them. That's what they want to see is the community getting involved. And so there's little kids planting trees, and there's old people planting trees, and
yeah,
the picture in front of the museum was awesome because we had the Tree City USA banner in front of it. And that was a big group of people. There must have been 30, 40 people there.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 minutes slow.
Yeah.
6 o'clock.
I hear a bell ringing.
Yeah.
It is 6 o'clock. Okay, it is 6 o'clock. We will roll on to the budget meeting.
Well, I see the crowd came in, so for the budget.
And left.
Want to thank them for coming.
Yeah.
So I do have a PowerPoint presentation to give, and I don't know how much detail you want me to go in. Typically, if nobody shows up, you've already seen most of this stuff. One of the things I'll just tell you up front is everybody gets one of these from the county, a property tax statement, and so I always bring mine to the hearing. And actually, when I looked at it this year, the first thing I did was calculated the cost of my taxes for next year, and it went up 7.4%. And my first thought was, wait a minute, what do we do? But then I went back and I looked at it, and so I can read this and I can go down it. And so the first thing I did was looked at my market value, and my market value went up 6.7%. And normally what I tell people if they come in and talk to me in my office about this, I'll go, great, you made money. The value of your property went up because it's based upon sales of like properties and how they go up. And I think originally when I bought the house, it was like $110,000 back in 2007. Now it's up to almost $130,000 for value. And, obviously it doesn't mean anything unless you sell it for what you want to sell it for. But that's the way I view it. I've always viewed that, being in city government and looking at these things for 30 years, that if the value of your property goes up, it's because somebody's selling properties like yours for that kind of money. And so when you adjust it back for that, and you'll actually see a couple slides where I talk about this, and I think I'll just run through them and maybe not focus on some of the supplementary information. But if I adjust it back, then actually my taxes would have went down if my value stayed the same. I don't know if I calculated the percentage on that, but it would have went down. So mine went up because the value of my property went up, not because we're raising taxes. And I think the mayor had mentioned at one meeting that, if there's new property in town, actually I gotta go back to the front. If there's new property in town, what you wind up having is the ability to spread the taxes that you have on that new property. And in effect, it can bring down your taxes on all the properties based upon that sharing. And I got a couple slides that talk about that. So if this is the levy for 2019, the budget for 2020. Our levy is up 3%. That's what we talked about. We didn't adjust it from the preliminary. One of the things that you'll see is there's something in that levy that comes out immediately as we go into the 2020 levy that we'll be looking at next year. and there's an asterisk. So here's the property tax levy broken down a little bit farther. We got the general fund, there's an asterisk by it. Because about 5 years ago, the Government Accounting Standards Board made us include some of our debt levies into the general fund, and one of them that we included had to do with a capital purchase, which is a loader. So there's a loader lease that's in this levy for the general fund, and that goes away. It's the last year of that. That goes away next year. Now, I'll make a comment about that a little bit further down, but it's just important to know that. So this number isn't something that has to carry forward the way it is. We have the library fund. Typically what I'll do is I'll give them a percentage increase on levy, and then I'll balance that fund with local government aid money. And then debt service is obviously based upon all the different bond issues that we have. There is a tax abatement in there. One of the things I keep forgetting to do, that abatement is only good for, I think it's 9 years, but it doesn't affect us because basically it's a pass-through. So we put it on the taxes and then it goes back to the car dealer. So it doesn't actually increase anybody's taxes. It's what they would have paid in taxes. It's a wash. If you look at that levy, one of the things I like to share on this graph is that way back in 2001, our levy was $1,251,000, and now our levy is finally starting to creep up a little bit. I think we passed that one in 2011. So it took from 2001 to 2011 to get above the tax levy that we're levying. So for that whole period, anybody that complained because their taxes were going up too much forgot that their taxes went down, and that was strictly because of local government aid. We got more of it, we reduced taxes, that's what we're supposed to do with it. The levy breakdown is here. You can see the general fund without that loader levy was actually $754,000, and then we have the equipment levy is $55,717, and so that goes away next year. So most of what we're levying is either general fund or debt, but the debt's spread out amongst a number of different things. So then if we look at, where we at as a community, market value in Morris went up about 3.5%. That's because we had new value of property coming in, and it's happened for a couple years now, that the tax rates get spread onto that value to come up with the actual tax capacity that we have as a city. So if we go to that slide, you'll see that the tax capacity went up about 3.8%. That varies depending on what the rates are actually at for the state of Minnesota. So they do play with the rates a little bit. It's complicated. I don't try to explain it. Actually, Rebecca Young was at another meeting this morning, and I think she uses some other cities' pie chart for trying to explain how taxes work, because it's very complicated, and it's different for almost every single piece of property. Like mine is different because I had a value adjustment. But that's good. If your tax capacity is going up, that means that you have more property. And then we apply our property tax levy to our tax capacity, and so our actual tax capacity rate went down almost a full percent. And if you had no adjustments on your value, then your taxes would have went down, and that's what I saw on my tax sheet that I got from the county. So then we get into the actual budget, and I don't know how much of this you want me to go through as far as the budget. Let me just pull this up. I think you guys got this in the media too, right? This whole packet, and this is the same, pretty much the same thing that you got on the preliminary budget. There's only a couple changes that took place, and I can talk about them. Obviously, we had a LGA increase that helped us balance this budget out. Next year, we will take a look at what we need to balance. One note I'll just make to you, the state revenue forecast came out at the beginning, or when was that, last week, at the end of the week. And the state has a $1.3 billion budget surplus. That's important to understand, because of the fact that they're gonna go into a budget year trying to figure out what they're gonna do, and they have money to be able to deal with. And whether or not they're gonna take a look at LGA again, I don't know. The league will be pushing for it, the coalition will be pushing for it. I haven't seen the 2021 numbers yet for local government aid, but that's a number that's gonna be important for us to look at for that next budget. We had a couple things that we talked about at the preliminary budget with bond issues and some of the things that we did with that. We already talked about the loader, the general fund budget's going up 5.3%, but again, the loader is part of that, because that loader payment is part of the general fund budget, as I mentioned. We finished out all the work that we did with the water treatment plant and having to reorganize and redo things within there, and I talked about this in the preliminary, where we moved some of the position costs to the general fund just because of the nature of how things are set up. Wages are 2.5%. That's by contract. Next year is the last year in a 3-year contract. So we'll be negotiating new ones for 2021 and on. One of the changes that happened since we met in our work session was we got our renewal for health insurance, and at first glance, it looked really good. At second glance, it looked really bad, because the 2 primary clinics in Morris got re-rated under PEEP, and because of the re-rating, what we were facing was a $1,000 increase in deductible for individuals and a $1,000 increase in deductibles for families. And actually Doug over at Midwest Health went to the clinics. They didn't really understand how it was going to affect people. They did know about the change, but they renegotiated their positions with PEEP, and so they're getting re-rated back down to where they were, and so that's going to go back down. So really, in the end, we had a 6% increase in health insurance, which is a very, very good increase. I'll take that any day. The previous year was down about 1%, and the previous year before that it was down about 10% when we moved to the public employees plan. So we're pretty happy with that. One of the other things that's in this that wasn't in the preliminary budget was we actually, well, there's 2 things in here. One of them was highlighted. The airport manager position got downgraded from 30 hours per week to 20. And the reason for that is Tom Clues, who does the work out there, does what he needs to do out there. He doesn't spend any more time than what he needs to spend out there. And what we realized was, maintenance-wise, we didn't need a 30-hour-a-week position. Originally, that was a full-time position. And so we downgraded that and actually saved a little bit of money in the budget. And then one of the things I talked about at the last meeting was we need to do something with our website. So I actually put in some more professional fee money for the website design. And we didn't raise the tax levy to do it. We didn't raise up the budget to do that. We didn't actually adjust out anything going to capital outlay for funding and stuff like that. We just left everything pretty much the same. I don't know if there Was there anything else in there? I don't know if anybody saw anything in there that you wanted me to talk specifically about, with regards to that. One of the things I mentioned was, yes, we're paying off the loader lease, but sometime next year, we may recommend that we do another capital equipment purchase. Cause we do need big pieces of equipment, and typically we'll do them on a 5-year or a 10-year, lease, or, we can actually do a certificate of, debt with a local bank for them. But that's something that's probably gonna come up, that we'll talk about.
Quick piece of equipment we talked
It's either gonna be, like a road grader or a dump truck or something like that. We didn't put them into the budget just because of the fact that these big ones, you gotta finance them a different way. But it just makes sense they haven't replaced a lot of that big old equipment. This year, we got a couple pickup trucks in there, which we can do within the normal capital outlay budget, but, we'll come to you at some point. So it'll be a 2021 budget issue, it won't be a 2020 budget issue, because everything's taken care of, but I just wanna make you aware of that, and then,
Any option to do a electric or a hybrid, for the, trucks, the pickup trucks?
we can look at it, yeah.
Or like the police vehicle?
Yeah, and we've talked about it, Reggie and I talked about it, and actually, I met with some other people, because, I think there's some law enforcement agencies that are starting to bring in some hybrids, and we wanna see them. But, when you start talking about like dump trucks or big trucks, stuff like that, I mean, who is it, the big, what is it, DLH, who's the big, I always get that acronym wrong, they're worldwide, DHL. They're converting their whole fleet to electric.
Really?
Every single truck that they run is gonna be electric. And the way they're doing it is, they went to the truck companies and said, we want electric trucks, and they said, well, we're not gonna make them. So they formed their own company to make electric trucks. So they're making all their own electric trucks, and you know, it's coming. You know, we heard, you know, from Gerard about what's gonna happen. One of the things I shared out at the university, when they had their little sustainability get together, was that they announced, GM announced, and they're partnering actually with South Korean company LG Chem, and they're gonna build a $2.3 billion electric vehicle battery cell processing plant in Ohio. That's gonna, I think they're gonna have about 1,100 employees working there. So they're gonna make their own, GM's gonna make their own batteries for electric vehicles, because they believe they can get the price down to make it more affordable and stuff. So we'll keep looking.
Good.
For what we can. Trying to think if there's anything else in there. Maybe we can slide back to the PowerPoint just and see where we're at here. Okay, I'll just quick flip through these. So the overall budget was down just a little bit, but Brian's not here. Usually he makes a comment on that. It sometimes doesn't mean anything just because of the fact that we move money back and forth between different funds and stuff like that. But this is the total of the city budget, everything included. The general fund budget I mentioned was up 5.3%. It included the loader lease. This is a graph that just shows where the general fund budgets come from over the years. It's pretty steady growth. In the last few years, it's even leveled off more. LGA, we had a big jump way back in 2002. That's how we lowered down the taxes. It doesn't look as big on this just because of the fact that the number has been growing, but it leveled off in the last 5-6 years substantially, and we got a little bit more this last year, but we'll see what happens moving forward.
And I think, Blaine, it's kind of interesting that we've done that, you know, despite we've been really getting less and less local government aid each year. So
Right.
Kudos to you for doing it, and you have.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we got more local government aid, we didn't spend it all, we carried it all, we did one-time things, and that's the way to do it. Here's a comparison, and the interesting thing, if you look at that line, the top one is our expenses, the middle one is local government aid. So if you take the line where we're at to where we're at now, it's pretty steady, but the one that people should like is if you look at the line for levy, it's pretty flat. It's pretty flat, and there's actually years where if you projected where you'd come to today, we're below it. Yeah, the mayor had made a comment that, I think it was the last meeting, that do we use some of that increased value to maybe raise the levy? You know, and that's a decision that you guys would need to make, you know, to try to keep up with some of the other things. I tend to be more conservative, so people should be pretty happy that their levy today is actually pretty flat compared to their levy back in 2001.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Capital improvements, we're actually down a little bit, or quite a bit, but last year we moved money from, and this is where it gets kind of tricky, we moved money from the capital outlay fund to the capital improvement fund to do more road work. That's what that money was all about. And so then this year, we didn't do that, because we know what our road work is, but there's another chunk of money that I'll just mention it here because we've talked about it in the preliminary budget. We talked about it in the work session where there's a group of some projects that what I'm recommending is that the engineers put it together in a bid package with our normal reclaim work so we can look at what the numbers are. East Side Park, Chiswick parking lot, the sidewalks down on California and Green River Park. We'll get bid numbers on all that stuff here shortly, and then I'll come back to you. It winds up being about $350,000 worth of stuff that we can maybe look at moving some money from reserves, maybe a little bit of money from the liquor store or something to do that work. And that's really what we did this last year with road improvements to try to get caught up, and it worked. I mean, we're doing a lot of work to get caught up on stuff. So we can keep looking at that. And the only thing that doesn't show up anywhere in here, and it's because we're waiting on a number, is we do have an issue with the ladder truck in the fire department. And so I'm waiting on a number from Brad Searles, working with the company to get a number on refurbishing that ladder truck. And that could be 150 grand, 200 grand. A new ladder truck's probably 1.2 million. Finding a used ladder truck's probably a good $700,000. But talking to Brad, and obviously we'll be talking with the fire department. He thinks that we can send it out, get it refurbished. There's a lot of things with the hydraulics and stuff like that that need to be dealt on it. The chassis is good, the engine's good, the hours are good on it, but you know, that's something that we do need to get some numbers on. And then we'll figure out how we want to deal with that.
We don't have any major road projects until 2021.
Right. So that's one of the things in capital improvement is we'll look at a small road project over on East 6th Street and Columbia Avenue, doing some underground work. And that'll be the first one we've done since below the high school. So we'll be providing information to you in the spring, and then we'll have a public hearing in the fall with the property owners, and then do an assessment project on that. And that's in the list, and I think everybody got the list. I don't know if you want me to pull it up or talk about it. The franchise list. There's a bunch of small little roads that we're going to be
Maybe it
doing.
wouldn't hurt to show it. So, for
So
the
if we-
benefit of the people watching,
The media people,
right?
Those that came.
the people that came.
For those that watch the tape,
the channels.
for those that are shut in.
Let's see. This is our levy. This is capital outlay.
It's 30, page 33, I think. That's capital improvement, is that what we're looking for?
Yep. Now we gotta go back the other way. Yeah, so you can see, this is what we have a lot of stuff on the agenda for next year, but you can see where those wait for the bid ones are.
Yeah.
And the sidewalk improvement project, that's still on the table. So what I would anticipate is, we'd get a list of sidewalks that need to be improved, and we'd probably send out notices to the property owners, and then, advise them that if they want us to do the work, they'd have to petition us with a letter and sign off on it, and then we would finance it through probably our, reserves at a decent interest rate for a period of maybe 5 to 10 years for each one of the property owners. Then they could get their sidewalk done, or they could do it themselves. Some would do that.
It's nice to see those, East Side Park improvements and,
Yep.
and the Chiswick Field parking lot. I know we've talked about those for a while, and, you know, both those parks are used a lot.
Well, and if you throw them all into a bid, then you're probably gonna get a better price, you know, because if you're a concrete, contractor, you're gonna be interested in a nice chunk of work to do. Riley's usually gives us a very good bid on our, reclaim projects. And so what we'll do is we'll have them as separate bids within the overall bid. And then we always reserve the right to pick and choose what we want to do then. So that's that. Let me just see if I can get back here. So that's capital improvement, capital outlay budget. Oh. Again, that was down because we moved money to the capital improvement fund this last year. And then I had the capital outlay listing up. I don't know if you want me to pull it back up and. So this is capital outlay, and we still leave a little bit at the end in case something comes up, so we have a contingency amount down there, but the ones that are highlighted are ones that are either our leases or payments. So we got, the electric car, we got the 4th of 5 payments on the air pack system that we have for the fire department, the loaders, the 5th of 5 payments. Stump grinder, 4 of 6 payments. Not sure why we didn't just buy that flat out. That, I think it's just, sometimes when you go to companies, I think the reason we did that was, it was a newfangled thing. And when they brought it, it's like, I don't know, well, let's, but it actually turned out to be a very, very good piece of equipment. And then we got the LED lights, you know, for a lighting system. This is for City Hall and downtown and all that, and those are monthly payments, so there's 12 a year. Just a little bit. We got some computers in the library that they asked for, and you kind of see see some of the stuff. Some of them don't require money from the general fund, like the liquor store has its own money. Central Garage, we didn't have anything this year. Their new lift got put in, so that's really nice. Any questions on that at all? Libraries up 4.1, but we put some computers in there. That's so they show up in their budget. Otherwise, they'd be right in it with everybody else. Stormwater is basically pretty much what we take in. Lodging tax is pretty much what we take in. We do have click content on board now, working on marketing and everything, so that's going well. Debt service, we solve our bond issues. And actually, one of the things I'll share with you, I did get a email from Nick Anhut from Ellers. Every year they review our bonds. I think the last one we sold was right around 3.4 or something like that. Well, bonds are down to like 2.5 now. And so he's got a recommendation that we maybe do a refunding of 3 of our bonds. And so that'll be coming back to you probably in the next month, to refinance some of our bonds. There's certain points in the life of the bonds that you can do that. And so we'll get our interest rate down on 3 of our bond issues.
Yeah, if you can gain another %.
Yeah.
What's the difference, refunding bond versus an IMP bond?
So the original bond when we do a project is the improvement bond,
Okay.
and then if we get a better interest rate on that bond issue, then it'll be a refunding bond.
So then those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate bonds?
Yes.
One's the original improvement bond, and then the refunding bond is something different. It's
Right.
not part of that.
And that refunding bond could probably include 3 older bonds
Okay.
that got put into it. And, yeah. So, but they do a very good job of watching that for us. And then there is a cost of bonding, but they factor all that into what your savings are.
Can we use our lodging tax money for our lighting on our signs?
So the law allows us to charge the 3% on the hotels to market the community as a tourist destination. So then the question would be, lighting on a sign in town, is that marketing?
Mhm.
I think it is.
So I don't believe it is, because
Yeah, I just-
it doesn't affect anybody that we're trying to get here to come in here. It affects the people that drive by here.
Or driving through town. It'd affect anybody coming through town to see, who defines, who sets up the definition of what is determined by that definition? Lodging tax, and to bring people into town, how is that?
Well, I think
You're reaching out to people beyond.
the easiest way to explain that is, I'm not gonna put my career on the line by violating state law.
But state
By
law
doing-
says, I mean, what
State law says you use it for marketing, so,
and they don't define marketing.
well, but between Deb and I, we sit down, we talk about what we can do with the money that we deal with. So there are places that they might spend it on things that aren't legal, and unless you get
How
caught,
are fireworks legal? How are fireworks?
well, so that's the one gray area, because it's a city celebration. It's the one gray area that we kind of waver on, as far as being able to use it for that. For entertainment, for fireworks, for Prairie Pioneer Days, it's a city celebration, meant to bring people here, but, so it gets to be a tricky thing, because I guarantee you, if you use it to do lighting on signs, it's gonna open up the floodgates to use it on every single thing else that people will go, well, that will bring people here. That sign will not bring one person here to stay in a hotel. That's my opinion. It
So
simply
if I were
is,
driving through town and I saw this nice lighted sign, I thought, oh, hey, this looks like a great place to stay. They have hotels here, let's stay. I mean, you can I guess when you're coming up with a definition for marketing, you take whosever definition you're looking at, and I can make I can make a statement for, I believe this is a marketing technique, and you can make your statement, and that's why I asked who defines what marketing means. If the state laws, the definition is marketing, for marketing.
Well, marketing for tourism.
For tourism. So that's
So
bringing
then, if
people
you
in
look
to
up the
stay in
term
town.
marketing, what is marketing?
To create a need.
Advertising.
Advertising, okay.
I don't know, I'm just saying those.
And
would be-
who
I
are
don't-
tourists? Are tourists, anybody that, because then just spend it on whatever you want to spend it on. That's what I would say. Because you have to, you know, and the sad part is, we haven't been spending it on the stuff we should be spending it on. And that's advertising for people out there to know that we're here, to come here. We haven't done that. You know, and so that's really, when the lodging tax got created, that was one of the things that we talked about is, okay, now we're gonna put into place this tax, what can it be used for? And I advocated for putting in the tax, you know, because when I was in Breckenridge, the city council would not allow that, because they didn't wanna mess with that. And, but when I got here, it's like, yeah, we're interested, great, let's do it, but use it for marketing. Because we were actually spending money through the Economic Development Authority in Breckenridge to do TV commercials and to do radio ads and stuff like that. And it's like, put a lodging tax in and that would pay for all that stuff. And no,
Well, we go back to, we have a tourism board, I mean, part of those decisions, can't they come up, I mean, I know they're.
they would spend it locally. It would be spent on the chamber, it would be spent on
They
signs.
make the
it would be spent-
recommendation to the council, though, they're not this, they're just coming
Right.
up with ideas. I'm just
Well,
looking
and-
at different
and-
ways, because we don't
But,
spend
but
that money.
like I said, as a city manager and as a finance director, we have to give you our advice as far as whether or not we think that's a legal
Mhm.
way to spend that money, and I don't believe it is.
Well, and I can tell you, I sit on the tourism board also, Blaine and I are both on the board, and I know one of our goals is to get better, really, at marketing. And we haven't, you know, there's a lot of local events that happen in our community that don't get advertised. And I think right now our focus is to get better at that. You know, for example, the snowmobile race we had last year, there was an attempt to get some radio ads out, and it didn't happen. Now, you know,
Right.
so that's what I'm saying. That's our focus right now, is to
Yeah.
make sure we don't miss those opportunities and to keep the communication links open, so these organizations that are having events know where to go to. They know that if they got an event going on, they really need to contact the tourism representatives so we can help them promote their cause.
You know, and in the end, it's up to you, what you want to spend the money on. You know,
Well, if it's
so
gonna
so
be a
whatever
gray
you-
area and with the state and getting in trouble, we don't wanna do that.
No.
Well-
But we wanna spend the dollars to promote our community for somebody going through. I guess when I'm driving down the road and I see something that looks attractive as I'm going through, I'm in Wisconsin going out to see my niece, and I see a little community that it looks nice on the edge of town, I'm more inclined to stop in and visit and do some stuff in that town if it looks nice on the exterior with some stuff that's drawing me in. And
Right.
I'll stop in and check out some of the stuff. But we don't want to cross a gray area if that's a problem, but can we, if there's money that's sitting there that we haven't used, I guess is what the question I was bringing up.
And I think that's a good point. That, to me, that's tourism. If it's something that brings people to stop, if you're driving through and there's no lights, you have no idea where you're at, you're not gonna stop. There's nothing inviting in a town. You're just not gonna stop. So it's somewhat, yeah, is that gonna bring in, you can't put a number on it. Is
Yeah,
it gonna
so-
bring in 500 people? If it's not, we don't wanna make sure that we're not doing anything that.
Well,
is
and so
below the
it's
law.
marketing
Well, I
bricks and
think
mortar.
What you're talking about too is people that are traveling, you know, hey, wow, we just drove through this really cool little town up in Minnesota. Man, they had these nice welcome signs, and we did swing in, people were
The
nice. So, I mean,
downtown looked great, had lighted.
so you don't know how that's gonna help. I mean, you know, they get back to
But-
wherever they're going to, their destination location, and say, wow, it's a really cool little town.
But and how long has that lodging tax been in place?
Probably since like 2008.
So a few
2000.
years, I mean, several years, and we're still at a, and how long is
Right.
it? We're still not utilizing it, I don't believe, in the capacity that it could be. And so that's why I'm asking about a definition for marketing and who decides, and can we do more with that? And if we have a board, and yeah, I know they'll want us, but then let's look at some of their suggestions too. I mean, again, that's why.
Well, there's been a lot of suggestions like advertising, events, giving money to, because when that board first started, I don't know if you were around, Kevin, we started getting requests for that money
Right.
to give it to other places. And so that's, there's a pot of money that's sitting there that people are eyeballing. That's what's going on.
Well, we do give it. We give it to the department for fireworks, so we are giving it. And even though that's a
We don't-
citywide, I get where it's a
Give
citywide
it-
event. Where does that fireworks money, who does that go to, directed
So-
to?
So the rule is that we don't give any money to anybody. So the money goes to the fireworks company. So we contract with the fireworks company. This year, we contracted with the company for bouncy houses. But the only reason is because that's a city event. It's a community event. So that's the only reason why we're doing it. So we wouldn't do it for any other event. And, there's been some discussion about putting up signs. There was a request from the chamber that we advertise on the electronic signs for Prairie Pioneer Days. Well, that's local advertising. So one of the things that we've talked about in the tourism board is who are we trying to market to? So we're marketing outside of this area to get people to come into this area. That's what we're targeting, for marketing. So you got different markets, Fargo, Twin Cities, depending on what the event is up north, trying to get snowmobilers coming down, whatever. So we've talked about a lot of that stuff, but you wind up, and then for a period of time, we were giving money to the Chamber of Commerce to do our marketing for us. And then we know how that turned out, because it didn't wind up happening that way, and so then, that's how we got into this whole thing with this marketing company, and but in the end, it's, like I said, it's up to you guys if you want to do it.
Well,
But
I think the question, or the rule of thumb that I'd like to live with is if we can justify that it's gonna put heads on beds somehow, I think it's a worthy expenditure. I mean, it's maybe a little bit vague, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's where that money's come from, the hotels. So if we can look each other in the eye and say, you know what, we honestly felt that was gonna put heads on beds, that's, I don't know how, if we do get audited, maybe if we have to defend ourselves, if you will, maybe that's something we could look at.
Yeah, I mean, just in that heads on beds, it makes sense then that you go outside of the area because people from the area aren't going to come and stay overnight because they're just going to go home. So, but maybe like a sign advertising the hotels outside of town. I don't know. That might be a really gray area also. So, but I agree. We don't want to cross that gray area and get in trouble either. So,
Good discussion.
that's
Very good.
Very good
Good
discussion.
discussion.
And I think, Colby Osmond's the new chamber director, and she's very good. I mean, she sat in on our last meeting, and I think there's going to be a good working relationship with the chamber on that stuff and trying to help them out. We split up the water utility and the sewer utility into two. So this is actually a slide on the water utility, and it's going to take us probably a good year to figure out where we're going to be at with sales in water, and sewer seems to be pretty standard, but, we know that Denko 2 is coming on board as far as water sales, and next year's budget, should have a lot more data in there as far as this goes. And then we have a sewer utility, not a lot of projected income, but then sewer is probably less volatile when it comes to what you're spending money on. Not as many people and not as big an operation. And then the refuse fund is pretty much passed through. We contract with the refuse company. The liquor store, one of the things, I added a couple lines here, because I talked about this last time, so we're projecting $124,000 in net income in the liquor store. I put in the 2018 budget revenues, the actual final revenues for 2018. So you could see that they were being pretty generous in trying to figure out where they wanted to go. And so we actually backed that off for 2019. We'll see how we turn out at the end. The numbers are looking pretty good right now. December is a big month for the liquor store with Christmas holiday and actually November with Thanksgiving. So we'll see. We backed down the revenues a little bit to try to get a better picture where we're at and be more realistic. So we'll see what happens. And then central garage is really how we account for all the maintenance work that's done on city equipment and stuff. And we've been working with Brad to make sure that he's busy working on all of our equipment and documenting it. A lot of it's transit, and so we have a lot of transit vehicles, and we have to. That's how this probably got started, was because of the transit system. We had to have the accounting to keep track of that. And then just a few things at the end here. I mentioned the surplus, so we'll see what LGA is going to do. The union agreements, I'm going into that whole discussion with the unions based upon what we see for the future of revenues, LGA. We don't have any tax levy limits, because that was a discussion in the past. We do have the ability to levy what we want for levy without interference by the state, so that'll be a discussion in the union. And then health insurance costs have been pretty reasonable in the last few years. I think PEEP was a good option for us, but we'll watch and see what happens. A little bit more road maintenance. We continue to put money into capital outlay to take care of those kind of things. So that's kind of where we're at. We're doing pretty good for a community out here. The census is coming up this next year, so hopefully we're above 5,000. Otherwise, a couple things will change with us, but we'll wait and see how that's going to turn out.
Is the census actually going to cost us any money?
No, but they need workers. I mean, they're short a ton of workers, so I don't know how they're going to do it. But no, they pay for it. It's paid for by the Census Bureau, federal government. Once we get our numbers, then we'll look at them and verify them, and then after it's all done, then one of the things that will be coming back, I've been talking to Aaron Jordan, because I don't know what happened in 2010 when the census took place, but we didn't adjust the voting districts, because we had that, we got a really kind of funky group of people living out on the northeast side that have to vote on the west side. That should have got changed in 2010. I don't know why we didn't do anything with that, but once we get the numbers, then we can sit down and look and we'll go from there.
East Point Village is going to change the aspect to, you know, we went from 0 people on that on that property to, who knows, 150 probably.
Yeah, and so the new apartments by the Armory.
Yep.
So that'll shift some around, but then you know, it's going to be interesting. We know that there's a lot of migrant labor that comes into this area with the dairies and stuff like that, and they all get counted, so it's gonna be interesting to see what the numbers look like. The university's down in population, we know that. I think they're just right around 1,500 now. So I don't know what they were the last census. They probably at least a couple hundred more on the last census. All right, any other questions? That's pretty much it.
Okay, so any final questions? No questions from the citizens? So we have 3 resolutions to act on.
I'll move on the first resolution on approving the final 2019 levy for collection in 2020.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? We'll have roll call vote on the resolution, please.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Jolson,
Yes.
Wallers,
Yes.
Salvi, Mayor Hughes.
Yes. And next, we have a resolution adopting the final 2020 budget for the city of Morris.
I will move approval of the resolution adopting the final 2020 budget for the city of Morris.
I will second.
Any further discussion? We'll have a roll call vote on that resolution, please.
Councilmember Jolson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Salvi, Wallers,
Yes.
Mayor Hughes.
Yes. And finally, we have a resolution setting the annual pension benefit for Morris Fire Relief Association. Anybody know what page that's on?
90.
It's way in the end, okay.
Did that go up another $50?
Another $50, yeah.
It's been pretty consistent.
Yep.
I'll move approval of the fire department increase.
I will second that. Any further discussion?
Just one note on that, I think I put it in the memo.
Yeah.
I was looking for cities that were comparables, and some of them weren't showing up. There's about 30, I think over 30 cities that moved their fire, well, cities, 30 relief associations moved into this voluntary state retirement fund system that they have. So we're starting to see more and more of that. I think they're down to like 570 relief associations. So that's an option, but our relief association does a very good job investing their money, and they're very healthy, and I don't know that they've ever talked about that as an option, but it's
We've
getting,
looked at it, I mean, back when I was taking care of it,
it's
10, 15 years ago, that was an option, but just looking at some of the other state pension plans, you look at every year you have issues with
Oh, yeah.
those and what's going on with them, but it doesn't cost the city anything for this increase, it's taken care of off the revenues and the interest they're making off their investments, and then I see that we had the insurance premium money was in our budget to pay back to the relief that we get back from the insurance companies, so that's that money that's put into that fund
Right.
to take care of that, so.
Yep.
It's nice to be able to offer that to our firemen.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
I alluded to earlier,
Yep.
they put themselves at risk every time they go on.
Yep. It's a good recruiting tool and retention.
Yeah, we're lucky to have a good crew, and we're
Well, like
lucky
I
to have
said,
people
this
step
year-
forward to take the
Yeah.
chairs, the positions.
this year was a tough year for those guys.
Yeah.
You know, that, I just, I don't know how they do it. You know, I had a couple good talks with Dave on that. You know, when you're showing up at accident sites and there's young kids that are killed, you know, or just stupid accidents where people get killed and stuff like that. And, you know, law enforcement, same way. You know, they just, I don't know how they do that job, because I wouldn't want to do it.
And out here, chances are you probably are gonna know somebody, or somebody who's related to
Yeah.
somebody. I mean, that's just out in small town USA, that the first one on the scene, it's probably somebody that knows. So, yeah, it is a tough racket.
Okay, any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote for that resolution?
Councilmember Wallers,
Yes.
Salvi, Jolson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Hughes.
Yes. We have come to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else that we need to talk about?
Next meeting is.
Next meeting is the
23rd.
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 Yep, so. Meeting